A $500 million deal is collapsing in a luxury private dining room. The CEO, Matteo Thorne, is bright red, his fists clenched. Across from him, the Japanese investors are silent, their faces like stone, ready to walk. Their translator is sweating, butchering the language, and with every word, the deal dies a little more. Nobody in this high-powered room can fix it, but someone else is in the room. Someone they all ignored. The waitress, Eliza, who's been silently pouring their water. She's watching her own dreams be insulted, and she's about to break her silence. The air in the salon privé of L'Ambroisie was so thick with tension you could have cut it with one of the restaurant's silver fish knives. This was not Eliza Vance's first high-stakes dinner. As a senior waitress at one of the city's most obscenely expensive restaurants, she had served politicians celebrating victories they hadn't earned, tech barons finalizing buyouts that would ruin thousands, and old money families dividing inheritances with surgical spite. She was an expert in the art of being invisible, a ghost in a crisp black apron, trained to anticipate a need for water before the guest even felt thirsty. But tonight was different. The room had been booked for a month under the corporate name Thorne Industries. The memo from James, the restaurant's painfully precise maître d'hôtel, had been explicit. This is a 10-figure client. Nothing is to go wrong. Minimum interaction, maximum perfection. Eliza, more than anyone, understood the need for perfection. It was a standard she had once pursued in a different life. A life where she wasn't Dr. Eliza Vance, PhD in Japanese art history and material culture, but just Eliza, the woman whose $200,000 in student debt had forced her to trade academic symposia for silver service trays. She smoothed her apron, her hands steady, but her stomach was a knot. The debt was a physical weight, a constant, dull ache behind her ribs. Every 18-hour double shift, every condescending guest, every passive-aggressive correction from James, it all went into the black hole of her interest payments. "Vance," James hissed, gliding up to her at the service station just outside the salon. His suit was immaculate, his face sharp. "They are arriving. You and Sarah will handle the service. Leo will bus. Do not speak unless spoken to. Do not make eye contact. Do not exist. Understood?" "Understood, James," Eliza said, her voice a perfect neutral monotone. Sarah, the other waitress, nervously adjusted her ponytail. Sarah was a talker, a smiler. She was terrible at being invisible, and James despised her for it. Leo, the busboy, a 20-year-old art student who reminded Eliza painfully of herself, just nodded, his eyes wide. The doors of the restaurant opened. First came the Americans, Matteo Thorne, CEO of Thorne Industries. He was a man who didn't walk. He conquered. He was tall, broad, with a face that looked permanently flushed from either high blood pressure or chronic rage. He wore a Patek Philippe watch that could have paid off Eliza's loans twice over. He was already barking into his phone. "I don't care what it costs, just get it done." He snapped it shut and looked at James. "Room ready?" "Of course, Mr. Thorne. This way." Behind him were two younger, nervous-looking men in identical suits, clutching briefcases. They were the lieutenants, the yes men. Then, the Japanese delegation arrived. The contrast was immediate. They moved with a quiet, unified grace. The leader was an older man, Mr. Kenji Tanaka. He was small, elegant, and wore a simple, dark suit of such exquisite cut that it made Thorne's expensive tailoring look like a costume. His eyes were bright and missed nothing. He was flanked by two others, a stern-looking woman in her 50s, Ms. Akemi Inoue, and a younger man, Naoki Sato, who seemed to be his chief aide. And with them was one more person, A Westerner. A pale, slightly disheveled man in his late 30s who looked like he'd been pulled from a community college faculty lounge. This, Eliza assumed, was the translator, Gregory Mills. "This way, gentlemen, madam," James oozed, pulling open the heavy oak doors to the salon privé. Eliza and Sarah slipped in behind them, water pitchers in hand, disappearing into the alcoves of the room, ready to begin the long, silent dance of service. The table was set. The trap was laid. The meeting was about to begin. For the first 30 minutes, the dinner was a symphony of clinking silver and strained silence. Eliza and Sarah moved like shadows. Pour water, step back. Clear the amuse-bouche, step back. Place the appetizer forks, step back. Matteo Thorne was trying to play the part of the gracious host, but it was a role he was ill-suited for. He was a shark forced to make small talk. "This restaurant," Thorne boomed, gesturing with a breadstick, "is the best in the city. Only the best for you, Tanaka-san." Gregory, the translator, cleared his throat. He leaned toward Mr. Tanaka and said, in what Eliza immediately recognized as painfully broken, textbook-level Japanese, he says, "Kono resutaran wa ichiban desu. He likes you. Very much." Eliza stiffened. It was clumsy, but not entirely wrong. Mr. Tanaka nodded, a polite, unreadable smile on his face. He replied in a long, flowing stream of Japanese. It was elegant, formal, and complex. Eliza, standing by the wine cabinet, understood every word. "Thorne-san, your hospitality is generous. I, too, am pleased that after so many months of digital correspondence, we can finally meet. The true measure of a partnership, like the quality of a fine blade, is only revealed when one can see it and feel its balance in person. I trust our discussions tonight will have such a fine balance." All eyes turned to Gregory. He had gone visibly pale. He'd clearly only been prepared to translate from English, not to it. He licked his lips. He says, "Thank you for the dinner. He is happy to be here. He likes swords and balance. He hopes the talk is balanced." Matteo Thorne frowned, his brow furrowing. "Swords? What the hell is he talking about?" "It's a metaphor, sir," Gregory stammered. Miss Inoue, the stern Japanese woman, said something sharp and fast to Mr. Tanaka, too low for Eliza to hear. Mr. Tanaka's slight smile didn't waver, but his eyes grew colder. The appetizers arrived, seared scallops with a truffle reduction. As Eliza placed a plate in front of Mr. Tanaka, he nodded to her, a simple, polite acknowledgement. It was more respect than Thorne had shown anyone in the room. Thorne decided to get straight to business. "Look, Kenji," he said, mispronouncing the name. "Let's cut to it. Our new logistics platform, your artisan network, it's a $500 million synergy. We take your traditional products and blast them global with my tech. It's a revolution." He tapped a button, and a screen descended from the ceiling, showing a slick corporate presentation full of aggressive graphs and buzzwords. Disruption, scalability, efficiency. Gregory scrambled to translate. His Japanese was a disaster. He was using casual, almost rude forms of speech. He translated "blast them global" as "sekai teki nibakudan suru," which literally meant to bomb them globally. Ms. Inoue let out a tiny, sharp hiss. Mr. Tanaka's face became a mask of polished granite. Naoki Sato, the young aide, began typing furiously into his phone. Eliza felt a cold dread. She wasn't just watching a bad translation, she was watching an execution. This wasn't a language barrier, it was a demolition. Gregory wasn't just building a bridge, he was burning it down, plank by plank. Thorne, oblivious, plowed ahead. "My platform will triple your output. We'll streamline your production. Get rid of the slow, old-fashioned bottlenecks. We maximize profit." Gregory tried to translate bottlenecks. He couldn't find the word. He said, "Botoru no kubi." Literally, bottlenecks. Mr. Tanaka finally held up a hand. The room fell silent. He spoke in Japanese, his voice quiet, but carrying the unmistakable weight of command. "Thorne-san, the slow, old-fashioned bottlenecks you refer to are not flaws. They are the heart of our work. They are the 100-year-old traditions of our craftsmen. They are our kodawari, our relentless, spiritual pursuit of perfection. You speak of efficiency. You propose to take a 300-year-old Urushi lacquerware master and tell him to work faster. You do not understand. You do not see us. You see only a resource to be stripped." It was a devastating, eloquent dismissal. The deal was dead. Eliza's heart pounded. She knew the term kodawari. She had written 50 pages on it in her dissertation. She knew the Urushi masters he was talking about. She had studied the work of Isamu Takeda, a living legend. This wasn't just a business deal, it was a cultural collision. And then Gregory Mills delivered the final, fatal blow. He looked at Thorne, his eyes wide with panic. I'm not sure. He says it's difficult. Choto muzukashi. He used the classic Japanese phrase for polite, indirect refusal. But Thorne heard difficult as a negotiation. "Difficult?" Thorne laughed, a harsh, barking sound. "Of course it's difficult. That's why I'm here. Tell him to stop playing hard to get. Tell him this is the best offer he's ever going to get. Tell him he's either in or he's out. Right now." Gregory turned to Tanaka. He took a breath and said, in the most insulting, simplistic Japanese imaginable, he says, "Stop being difficult. Muzukashi nayo. Yes or no. Hai ka ai." It was the linguistic equivalent of slapping the man. Miss Inoue gasped. Naoki Sato stood up abruptly. Mr. Tanaka himself did not move. He simply placed his chopsticks down, perfectly parallel, on their ceramic rest. He looked at Mateo Thorne. Then he turned and looked at Ms. Inoue. He spoke 2 words in Japanese. "Kerimashu, let's go home." They all stood. The deal was over. Mateo Thorne's face went from flushed red to a terrifying mottled purple. "What? Where are they going? Gregory, what the hell did you say? What did he say?" Gregory stammered. James, watching from the doorway, looked like he was about to have a stroke. Eliza watched the scene, frozen. Mr. Tanaka and his team were turning to leave. All her academic life, she had revered the culture they represented, the dedication, the honor, the kodawari, and she was watching it be destroyed by these 2 fools, by Thorne's arrogance and Gregory's incompetence. Something inside her, a thread of patience and professionalism that had been worn thin by years of debt and disappointment, finally snapped. She stepped out from the shadows. "He said they're leaving." Eliza's voice cut through the room. It was clear and strong. Everyone froze. Thorne, Tanaka, James, Gregory. They all turned to stare at her. The waitress, the ghost. She wasn't looking at Thorne. She was looking directly at Mr. Tanaka. And then she did the unthinkable. She bowed, a deep, respectful, 45-degree bow. And she spoke, not in English, but in flawless, formal, academic Japanese. "Mr. Tanaka, my apologies are truly inexhaustible." The silence that followed Eliza's words was not just an absence of sound. It was a physical thing, a crushing weight that seemed to suck the very air from the salon privé. James's face went from pale to ashen. He took a half-step forward, his mouth opening and closing like a landed fish, but no sound came out. Sarah, by the service station, had literally dropped a silver water pitcher, but it made no noise. Leo caught it mid-air, his eyes as wide as saucers. Mateo Thorne looked at Eliza with sheer, unadulterated confusion, as if his dog had just started reciting Shakespeare. "What did you say?" But Eliza ignored him. Her entire focus was on Mr. Tanaka. The Japanese delegation had stopped, frozen in the act of turning to leave. Ms. Inoue's eyebrows had climbed to her hairline. Naoki Sato had lowered his phone. Mr. Tanaka himself turned slowly, fully, to face her. His expression was no longer one of cold offense. It was one of pure, laser-focused astonishment. He tilted his head, studying her. This tall Western woman in a waitress's uniform, who had just spoken to him with the formal, archaic politeness of a Kyoto courtier. He replied in Japanese, his voice sharp, testing her. "Anata wa?" "And you are." Eliza kept her eyes lowered, maintaining the posture of respect. "I apologize. I am a waitress here. My name is Eliza. I did not intend to eavesdrop, but it seems there has been a profound misundering." Thorne, his patience gone, slammed his hand on the table. "Enough! What is this? Gregory, what is she saying? What's going on?" Gregory, who was sweating through his suit, just shook his head. I don't know. Her Japanese it's too fast. It's very high level." "James," Thorne roared, "get her out of here. You're fired," he snarled, pointing a thick finger at Eliza. James lunged forward and grabbed Eliza's arm. "Miss Vance, you are terminated. Get out, now." "Wait," a quiet voice commanded. It was Mr. Tanaka. He had spoken in English. James froze, his hand still on Eliza's arm. Mr. Tanaka looked at Mateo Thorne. "This man," he said, gesturing to Gregory, "is not a translator. He is an insult. This man," he gestures to Thorne, "is impatient." He then turned his full attention back to Eliza. The room held its breath. He switched back to Japanese, and this time it was not a simple question. It was a complex, multi-part inquiry, a verbal test. "Elisa-san, you speak of a profound misunderstanding, a bold claim from one who serves the wine. Tell me then, what in your expert opinion was the nature of the misunderstanding? What did my colleague here," he gestured to Gregory, "fail to convey about my slow, old-fashioned bottlenecks?" It was a trap, a test of her comprehension, her diplomacy, and her nerve. Eliza took a breath. This was it. The end of her job, one way or another. The black hole of debt yawned before her, but so did the truth. She let the breath out and straightened up, finally meeting his eyes. "Tanaka-sama," she said, her voice retaining its formal tone, but now infused with a sudden, sharp confidence. The misunderstanding was not in the words, but in the concept. "Your translator," she gave Gregory a cold glance, "translated bottleneck as a problem, a bottle's neck. He did not translate your response at all. He said you were being difficult. He did not convey your explanation of Kodawari." Tanaka's eyes widened, just fractionally. She continued, the words coming in a torrent, as if a dam had broken. "You said your craftsman's traditions were the heart of your work. You said Thorne-san's proposal to streamline them was an insult to their spiritual pursuit of perfection. You were not negotiating. You were not being difficult. You were ending the discussion because you were, and are, fundamentally misunderstood. You were protecting the legacy of masters like Isamu Takeda." She had said the name of the lacquerware master. A sharp intake of breath came from the young aide, Naoki Sato. Ms. Inoue stared at her, and Kenji Tanaka smiled. It wasn't a polite smile. It was a real, sharp, intelligent smile. "Sit down, Eliza-san," he said, gesturing to the empty chair beside him. Mateo Thorne, his face a mask of purple, red, and white, looked from Tanaka to Eliza, and back again. He didn't understand a word that had been said, but he understood power. and in the space of 30 seconds, the power in the room had tilted, impossibly, from him, the CEO, to the waitress. "James," Thorne growled, his voice low. "Let her go." James released her arm as if it were burning. "Gregory," Thorne said, not even looking at the translator. "Get out." "But Mr. Thorne," I said, "get out." Gregory Mills scrambled, grabbing his briefcase and practically running from the room, a casualty of his own fraud. "Eliza," Thorne said, his voice dangerously soft. "You speak Japanese, apparently. You're the new translator. Sit down." "She will sit," Mr. Tanaka corrected, "as my guest." Eliza looked at the chair. She looked at James, who seemed to be vibrating with suppressed rage. She looked at Matteo Thorne, who was clearly already recasting her in his mind from a servant to a tool. She pulled out the chair and sat down. The wool of her cheap waitress skirt felt scratchy against the plush velvet. She was at the table. Eliza sat, her back poker straight. The whiplash was extreme. 3 minutes ago she was invisible, her greatest worry a wine stain. Now she was the central pivot in a $500 million negotiation, sitting between a CEO who wanted to own her and a Japanese mogul who was testing her. "Right," Thorne barked, rubbing his hands together, trying to reclaim control. A little mix-up. All sorted. "Eliza, tell Mr. Tanaka, that we apologize for the translator. A terrible mistake. The agency will be sued. Tell him my offer stands. It's a great offer. Tell him." Eliza took a sip of water. Her hand was perfectly steady. The fear was gone, replaced by a cold, sharp clarity. She had been a ghost for 3 years. Now, she was going to speak. She turned to Mr. Tanaka and spoke in Japanese. "Thorne-san offers his apologies for the translator's incompetence. He wishes to reiterate his offer." She delivered the line with perfect, neutral diplomacy. Mr. Tanaka nodded, then replied, his tone conversational. "And you, Eliza-san? Do you think it is a great offer?" Thorne, hearing the Japanese, immediately jumped in. "What did he say? Is he in? Did he accept the apology?" Eliza held up a hand, a small, polite, "stop" gesture. Thorne stopped, his mouth open. She looked at him. "Mr. Thorne, please, do not speak again until I ask you to. This is not a negotiation. This is a salvage operation." Thorne's face went crimson. His lieutenants looked like they'd seen a ghost. James, by the door, actually took a step back. No one spoke to Matteo Thorne like that. Before he could explode, Eliza turned back to Mr. Tanaka. "Tanaka-sama, my opinion is worthless. I am a waitress. However, my academic opinion, which is all I have, is that the offer is incomplete. It treats a living art as a data point. It mistakes Kodawari for inefficiency." She's talking about Kodawari," Naoki, the young aide, whispered to Ms. Inoue in Japanese. She used the Takeda-sensei name. Ms. Inoue was staring at Eliza, her gaze no longer hostile, but intensely analytical. Mr. Tanaka leaned forward. "Incomplete. A good word. So complete it for me. You mentioned Isamu Takeda. What do you know of his work?" This was no longer about translation. This was a doctoral defense. Eliza leaned forward, too. The waitress was gone. The scholar had arrived. "I know," she said, her Japanese flowing like music, that Takeda-sensei's urushi lacquerware requires 47 individual steps. I know he waits for a full lunar cycle to cure the final layer of crimson lacquer, believing the moon's gravity creates a superior density. I know he has only 3 apprentices and has disowned one for taking a shortcut. His philosophy is not about the finished product. It is about the sacredness of the process. Your company, Tanaka-san, is built on partnerships with artisans like him. She paused, then looked at Thorn, and back to Tanaka. Thorn-san's proposal, she continued, is based on a platform that sees the 47 steps as 46 redundancies. It sees the lunar cycle as a production lag. It would try to replace the 3 apprentices with a robot. You are correct. He does not see you. He sees an inventory problem. The room was utterly silent. Mr. Tanaka sat back in his chair. He looked at Ms. Inoue, and they shared a look that Eliza couldn't read. Then he looked at Matteo Thorn. "Mr. Thorn," Tanaka said in his careful English, "your waitress is better than your entire team. She understands. You do not." Thorn, to his credit, was a predator. He didn't care about the insult. He just smelled blood in the water, and he was realigning to the new reality. The deal was dying, and this waitress was the only one with a defibrillator. "Then what?" Thorn said, his voice a low growl. "What's the problem? You want more money? Is that it? Fine. Tell him, Eliza. 5% more. But that's it." Eliza closed her eyes. It was like he was physically incapable of learning. She turned to Tanaka. "He is offering an incentive, a financial sweetener." Mr. Tanaka laughed, a dry, short laugh. "He is trying to buy a master's soul with a 5% discount. He is a fool." Eliza translated, though she softened the blow. "Mr. Tanaka says this is not about money. He says you are still missing the point." "Then what is the point?" Thorn exploded, standing up, his chair scraping violently. "I'm offering to make this man rich. I'm offering him the world, and he's worried about the moon. This is insane." "The point," Eliza said, her own voice rising, "is respect." She stood up too, facing Thorn. She had nothing left to lose. "The point is that you are walking into a 1,000-year-old temple and telling the monks their prayers are inefficient. The point is that you see everything as a number, and they see everything as a story. You're not just buying a product, you're asking to become part of a legacy. And you haven't shown 1 ounce of respect for what that legacy means." The room throbbed with the echo of her words. Thorn stared at her, his chest heaving. He saw her, really saw her for the first time, not as a waitress, not as a tool, but as an adversary, and, perhaps, as an asset. He slowly sat back down. "Okay," he said, his voice dangerously calm. "Okay, Professor. You're so smart. You're not the translator anymore. You're my lead negotiator. Fix this. Fix this. And you can write your own ticket. Fail. And I will personally make sure you're serving coffee in a diner in hell." James, who was still frozen by the door, jumped. Yes, Mr. Thorn. Get them." He pointed at his 2 silent lieutenants. "Out of here. And get Dr. Vance a steak and a goddamn laptop." The dynamic in the room had shattered and reformed. Thorn's lieutenants and a weeping James, who had been ordered to stop hovering and get me a 300 bottle of sake, the good stuff, had vanished. Sarah and Leo were gone. It was just the 5 of them: Thorn, Eliza, Tanaka, Inoue, and Sato. A plate was placed in front of Eliza, a perfectly cooked filet mignon she hadn't ordered. She ignored it. Her stomach was churning with adrenaline. A laptop was open in front of her. "Right," Thorn said. "Talk. Fix it." Eliza looked at the hostile screen, then at the 2 opposing forces at the table. She was the bridge, and the bridge was on fire. She turned to Mr. Tanaka and spoke in Japanese, her tone shifting from the scholar's passion to the mediator's calm. "Tanaka-sama, please forgive his directness. He is a man who builds with a hammer. He does not understand the delicacy of a brush, but a hammer can build a strong house, even if it is ugly. His logistics platform is revolutionary, but it is a tool, not a philosophy. You must provide the philosophy. Mr. Tanaka considered this. Ms. Inoue spoke for the first time, her Japanese sharp. A hammer, Eliza-san. A hammer shatters. It does not build. It has shattered this negotiation. Only if the object is brittle, Eliza countered instantly, the idea forming in her mind. But what if it is strong? What if the break is the point? She turned to the laptop and typed. She found a high-resolution image and turned the screen to face Mr. Tanaka. It was a kintsugi bowl, an ancient ceramic, beautifully repaired with seams of golden lacquer. This, she said, is kintsugi, the art of golden joinery, the philosophy that a bowl is more beautiful for having been broken. Its flaws are not hidden. They are illuminated. They become its history, its strength. She looked at Thorne, then back at Tanaka. Thorne-san. He broke this negotiation. He was the hammer, but he did not shatter it. He revealed the crack. The crack is the efficiency mindset versus the Kodawari mindset, but you can fix it. Together. You can fill that crack with something stronger. Not just with Thorne-san's platform, but with a new hybrid model. One that uses his technology only to protect and promote your Kodawari, not to replace it. She turned to Thorne. Mr. Thorne, stop trying to streamline his craftsmen. It's an insult. Offer to build a platform that protects them. Use your logistics to create a global, digital apprentice program. Use your tech to authenticate his master's work, to fight fakes, to tell the 1,000-year-old story, not just ship a box. Thorne stared at her. The cogs were turning. He wasn't a philosopher, but he was a businessman, and he had just been handed a brilliant, marketable angle. Protect the brand. Authentication. Digital storytelling, he muttered. It's a luxury play, not a scale play. A luxury play. I can sell that. I can brand that. He looked at Eliza, a new respect in his eyes. Tell him. Eliza translated her own idea. She explained how Thorne's platform could be re-engineered, not to triple output, but to guarantee authenticity, how it could connect a buyer in New York, not just with a product, but with the video story of Takeda-sensei's 47-step process, creating a new, unforgeable bond. Naoki Sato, the young aide, was suddenly animated. He began speaking rapidly in Japanese to Tanaka. Tanaka-sama, this is it. This is the bridge concept we discussed. It solves the provenance problem. It's what Isamu Takeda himself complained about, that the world wanted his things, but not his story. This is how we give them both. Mr. Tanaka looked at Naoki, then at Eliza. He was still. You, he said to Eliza, have given us the kintsugi, the golden joiner. You have taken two broken pieces, our tradition and his brute force, and shown us how they might be joined. He picked up his glass of the very expensive sake that James had delivered. He raised it, not to Thorne, but to Eliza. Eliza-san, I am in your debt. He took a drink. Thorne, seeing this, grinned, though he misunderstood the gesture. We're back in business. Eliza, you're a miracle worker. Tell him we'll have the new proposal drawn up by morning. Eliza translated, and Mr. Tanaka nodded. The deal was not dead. It had been broken. And now, thanks to her, it was being remade, stronger and more beautiful than before. The main courses sat cold and untouched. The tension had broken, replaced by the frenetic energy of a new idea. Thorne was pacing, barking into his phone at his legal team. Scrap the old draft. We're pivoting to authenticity. Get the marketing VP on the line now. Mr. Tanaka, Ms. Inoue, and Naoki were in a huddle, speaking in rapid, excited Japanese. And Eliza just sat there. The adrenaline was fading, leaving a profound, bone-deep exhaustion. She had just saved a $500 million deal. She had just earned the respect of a man she'd only read about in textbooks. She had just, she realized, done the work she had spent her entire adult life training for. And she was still wearing an apron. The energy in the room was electric. Thorne was a whirlwind, sketching new flowcharts and barking about leveraging cultural assets. Tanaka and his team were meticulously drafting a new set of terms, focused on principles rather than numbers. Eliza was the center of it all, a human Rosetta Stone, translating not just words, but entire business philosophies. She was running on fumes, but she had never felt more alive. As the details were being hammered out, Mr. Tanaka paused the discussion. He turned to Eliza, his expression serious. "Eliza-san," he said in Japanese, "we have been speaking for 2 hours. I know more about your mind than I do about Mr. Thorne's, but I do not know your story. You are not a waitress. That is a costume. Who are you?" The question hung in the air. Thorne stopped his pacing. "What did he say?" Eliza looked at Tanaka. "He asked who I am." "Tell him!" Thorne boomed. "Tell him you're my new vice president of special projects. Tell him you're my right hand." Eliza held his gaze. "I am a waitress, Mr. Thorne, and I'm still on the clock." She turned back to Mr. Tanaka, choosing her words carefully. "My story is not important. I am just someone who studied. I have a degree in Japanese art history. I owe a great deal of money for that degree. So I serve wine to men like Mr. Thorne." There was no self-pity in her voice. It was a simple statement of fact. But Naoki Sato, the young aide, had been staring at her, his head tilted ever since she'd said the name Isamu Takeda. He had been typing her name, Eliza Vance, into his phone, along with Japanese art. His eyes suddenly went wide. He gasped and held his phone up to Ms. Inoue. She read it, and her jaw dropped. She showed the phone to Mr. Tanaka. He read the screen. He looked at the phone. He looked back at Eliza. He stood up. He bowed. Not a polite nod. A deep, profoundly respectful 90-degree bow, the kind a student gives a master. Thorne was flabbergasted. What in God's name is he doing? Why is he bowing to her? Naoki Sato, his voice trembling with excitement, looked at Thorne. He spoke in English for the first time. You do not understand. I am reading her paper." "Her paper?" Thorne said. "This is not Eliza," Naoki said, his voice rising. "This is Dr. Eliza Vance. She is the author of The Philosophy of Imperfection, Isamu Takeda's Urushie and Modern Application. It is the definitive text, our entire Takeda partnership. It was based on her research." The room imploded. Thorne's jaw hung open. A doctor? You're that kind of doctor?" Eliza felt the blood rush to her face. She had been discovered. The costume was off. Mr. Tanaka straightened, his eyes shining with a fierce, new light. "Dr. Vance," he said in Japanese, his voice thick with emotion. "You are not just a student of Takeda-sensei's philosophy. You are its greatest Western interpreter. Your paper is what convinced Takeda-sensei himself to trust us, to partner with our company. We have been searching for you for 6 months," Ms. Inoue spoke. "We tried to find Dr. E. Vance. We assumed you were a tenured professor at a major university. We did not look," she said, with a glance of profound disdain at the restaurant's opulence. "In a place like this." Eliza was stunned. You read my dissertation?" "Read it," Naoki practically shouted. "Dr. Vance, our entire team has studied it. We call it the Vance Protocol. It is our Bible for this venture." Mateo Thorne sank into his chair. He looked at the waitress who was a doctor. The waitress whose homework was the entire foundation of the deal he was trying to make. He wasn't in a room with a translator. He was in a room with the project's architect. He had offered her a job as his assistant. He had threatened to have her fired. He had told her to get him a laptop. A slow, terrible understanding dawned on his face. He hadn't just made a mistake. He had committed a sacrilege, and he, the great Matteo Thorne, was now the least important person in the room. "Dr. Vance," he said, his voice hoarse. I seem to have misjudged." Eliza looked at him, and for the first time, she felt a sliver of pity for the man. He was a shark, yes, but he was a shark who had just found himself in a library, hopelessly out of his depth. Mr. Tanaka stepped forward, ignoring Thorne completely. He was now speaking to Eliza as an equal, as a colleague. "Dr. Vance, this is fate. Goen, a true karmic connection. The deal with Mr. Thorne is one thing. That is just business. But my work with you, that is something else." He switched to English for Thorne's benefit. "The deal, Mr. Thorne, is signed. My team will finalize the details with your team, based on Dr. Vance's Kintsugi model. I trust you will compensate her appropriately for her consultation." Thorne nodded, mute. "Of course, anything." "Good," Tanaka said. He then turned back to Eliza, his entire demeanor softening. "But that is not what I wish to discuss." He paused, a true, warm smile spreading across his face. "Dr. Vance, the deal is done, but our work is just beginning. I have a second proposal for you tonight." The aftermath of the revelation was a deafening silence from Matteo Thorne. He sat, deflated, watching as his $500 million deal was casually finalized by the 3 Japanese executives and the waitress he'd almost had thrown out. When the principles were agreed upon, Mr. Tanaka stood. "Mr. Thorne, your hospitality has been illuminating. My team will be in touch with yours. We are finished here." Thorne, humbled and looking 20 years older, stood as well. He looked at Eliza, his mind clearly racing, trying to calculate his next move. "Dr. Vance." "Eliza," he said, his voice now smooth, the predatory gleam returning. "A word. Before you go." Mr. Tanaka held up a hand. "Dr. Vance will be leaving with us. But I believe you were about to make her an offer, Mr. Thorne. Please let us hear it. Transparency is important." Thorne was caught. He gave a tight, forced smile. "Of course. Dr. Vance, what happened here tonight? It was astounding. Pure talent. I was wrong. And when I am wrong, I fix it. I want you at Thorne Industries. Forget that assistant nonsense. I'm creating a new position. Global Head of Cultural Integration. You'll report directly to me. Name your price. 6 figures. 7. Whatever. You can write your own ticket. A blank check." It was the offer he'd promised. The keys to the kingdom. An escape from her debt, her apron, her life. Eliza looked at him. The man who had insulted her, threatened her, and then tried to buy her. James, who had crept back into the room to clear the now frozen, untouched steaks, watched with wide, terrified eyes. Eliza met Thorne's gaze. "A blank check, Mr. Thorne? The problem is, I don't think you and I value the same things. I don't think your bank could cash that check." Thorne's face tightened. "Don't be a fool. This is a real job. Money. Power. A seat at the table." "I am already at the table," Eliza said quietly. She turned away from him, toward Mr. Tanaka. Mr. Tanaka nodded. "A generous offer, Mr. Thorne, filled with money. Now it is my turn." He faced Eliza. He did not offer her power or a blank check. He offered her something else. "Dr. Vance," he began, his voice respectful. "I cannot offer you a blank check. My company does not believe in such things. We believe in Correct compensation for correct work. I am offering you a job. Not as a negotiator, not as a vice president, but as an architect. He gestured to Ms. Inoue and Naoki. We are building a new foundation, the Takeda Tanaka Institute in Tokyo. It is dedicated to preserving and promoting the work of our artisan masters, using the very principles you outlined in your dissertation. We want you to run it, not as a consultant, as its founding director. He continued, It will not be easy. You will be dealing with 500-year-old egos and 21st century technology. Your salary will be comfortable, but you will not become wealthy in the way Mr. Thorne understands it. You will, however, be able to pay off your student loans in your first year. A small practical smile. We will not offer you a seat at the table. We will build the table with you, and with masters like Isamu Takeda himself. You will not just be studying his work. You will be his partner in preserving it for the next 1,000 years. This is my offer. Please, consider it. He bowed, and his team bowed with him. Eliza looked at the two men. On one side, Matteo Thorne. He offered her money, power, and a golden cage, a life spent translating his arrogance into a language the rest of the world could stomach. On the other, Kenji Tanaka. He offered her life's work. He offered her a purpose. He offered her the one thing she thought she had lost forever, her dream. She was standing at the crossroads of her entire life. The salon privé had become her personal judgment chamber. She turned to James, who was still holding a tray of cold, congealed food. James, she said, her voice clear. She unfastened the knot on her apron. I quit. She balled up the apron and dropped it onto the tray he was holding. She then turned to Matteo Thorne. Mr. Thorne, thank you for the meal. It was illuminating. She used his own word against him. Finally, she turned to Mr. Tanaka. She took a deep breath, and a smile, a real, genuine smile that lit up her entire face, finally broke through. She didn't to him. Tanaka-sama, she said, switching back to Japanese, the language of her heart. Itsu kara hajimetara, ii desu ka? When do I start? 6 months later, the only light in the office was the pale silver glow of the Tokyo dawn, creeping over the low-hipped buildings of Aoyama. The light didn't have to fight its way through a grimy, sound-proofed window in a back alley. It streamed in, pure and unfiltered, through a wall of glass that overlooked a private garden. A perfect, silent world of raked white sand and ancient, moss-covered stones. The office was quiet. The only sound was the soft shush of a bamboo shishiodoshi in the garden, a water feature designed to mark the passage of time. It was a sound Eliza had come to associate with peace. It was the absolute, polar opposite of the clatter of plates, the hiss of the espresso machine, and the sharp, acidic voice of James. Dr. Eliza Vance sat not at a cramped service station, but at a sprawling, single-slab desk of polished hinoki wood. The phantom limb feeling of an apron tie around her waist had finally faded. She was dressed in a simple, dark blue dress by a local designer. Her hair was tied back, not in a functional, greasy kitchen ponytail, but with a single, exquisite kanzashi pin, a gift from Mr. Tanaka. On her wall, there was only one piece of art. It was a large 1-meter-square lacquer panel, a personal gift from Isamu Takeda. It was a swirling, abstract cloud of crimson and black, so deep you felt you could fall into it. It was, he had told her, his meditation on the kintsugi conversation. A thank you, he had called it. It was, Eliza knew, one of the most valuable pieces of contemporary Japanese art in the world. She sipped her green tea. The first, and most beautiful, change in her new life had been a small, almost mundane one. On her 30th day in Tokyo, her first paycheck had cleared. She had logged into her American student loan portal, her hands shaking slightly. The number on the screen, the $12,180 about $50 that had been the monster under her bed for a decade, was still there. Eliza had taken a deep breath. She had transferred the full payoff amount, including interest. She had watched the number drop, digit by digit, until it read, "0 powa sewa." She had stared at the screen for 10 minutes, perfectly silent. Then she had put her head on her new Hinoki desk and wept, not for sadness, but for the sheer, crushing weight of its absence. She was free. Today, however, was not a day for quiet reflection. Today, there was a crisis. The door to her office slid open silently. Naoki Sato, her deputy director, bowed his head. He was no longer the tense, watchful aide. He was a confident, sharp executive, and his face was a mask of polite fury. "Elisa-sensei," he said, using the honorific of respect they had all adopted for her. "We have a problem." "Harrison and Cole," she said, not looking up from her screen. "Worse," Naoki said. "They've gone around us. They've pushed an update to the authentication app, the Vance Protocol app." Eliza's head snapped up. "What update?" Naoki placed a tablet on her desk. "They've gamified it. They've added a loyalty rewards program. If a user in New York buys a Takeda-sensei bowl and watches the authenticity video of the 47-step process, they get a 10% coupon for their next purchase." Eliza went cold. A coupon. They are, in their words, incentivizing engagement with the brand narrative. Eliza closed her eyes. This was Thorne's ghost. This was the same poisoned mindset. Harrison and Cole were the new American VPs from the Thorne Industries merger, sent to oversee the joint venture. And they were, in a single idiotic move, trying to turn Isamu Takeda's soul into a punch card. "They are paying people," Eliza said, her voice lethally quiet, "to watch a man's spiritual process. They are turning Kodawari into a sales promotion. They are taking the kintsugi, the golden repair, and trying to cover it with cheap, peeling glitter." "What do we do?" Naoki asked. "We undo it. Now, get the tech team in a room, and get Harrison and Cole on a video call. This isn't an oversight. This is an attack on the Institute's charter." Before Naoki could respond, her private line buzzed. It was Mr. Tanaka's extension. "Tanaka-sama, good morning," Eliza said, her voice instantly smoothing, betraying none of the fire. "Good morning, Dr. Vance." His voice was warm, but with a note of strain. "I'm afraid our American friends have arrived. A day early." Eliza froze. "Arrived? Here? In the building?" "Indeed. Mr. Harrison and Mr. Cole are in boardroom 2. They were not pleased with the quarterly reports, and they are, if I am reading the room correctly, here to find out why our founding director is running a cultural charity instead of a profit engine. They are very loud." He paused. "They are also very insistent on speaking to the man in charge. They have, I believe, been using he-him pronouns for the last 45 minutes, assuming you are a man." A slow smile spread across Eliza's face. It was not a kind smile. It was the smile of a scholar who was about to win a debate. "They think," she said, "that Dr. Vance is a man. They seem to be operating under that assumption, yes. And they're in boardroom 2? Yes. And they're upset about the artisan stipends and the lack of scalability? That is the summary I'm getting, yes," Tanaka said, a hint of amusement finally entering his voice. "Excellent," Eliza said. She stood up. "Naoki-san, please cancel that video call. It seems we get to have this meeting in person." And please, bring the Urushi budget file, the physical one. Eliza-sensei, Naoki said, a grin of his own appearing. It will be my pleasure. Eliza walked out of her office. She moved with a silent, gliding purpose, a skill she had, ironically, perfected while waitressing. But she was no longer a ghost. She was the master of the house. She walked past the open-plan office, where Japanese and American researchers worked side by side, translating 1,000-year-old kiln techniques for a modern audience. She walked past a wall displaying the first Kintsugi model products, each with a QR code linking to the Vance Protocol authentication app, the very app her new colleagues were trying to poison. She arrived at boardroom 2. Through the frosted glass, she could see 2 large, agitated silhouettes in expensive suits, pacing. Mr. Tanaka was waiting by the door. He simply nodded, his eyes bright. "They are very eager to meet you, Doctor." "I'm sure they are," Eliza said. She took a deep breath, not of fear, but of preparation. She thought of the woman she had been, terrified, invisible, buried under a mountain of debt. That woman was gone, her story broken and repaired with gold. Eliza reached for the handle. "Oh," she said, pausing. "Mr. Tanaka, I forgot to mention. I saw the news this morning. It seems Mr. Thorne's new cryptocurrency venture has attracted an SEC probe. It's a shame. He was so efficient," Mr. Tanaka chuckled. "Indeed, a true bottleneck. Karma, Eliza-san, is the oldest artisan." Eliza smiled. "It seems so." She pushed the heavy door open and stepped inside. The 2 men, Harrison and Cole, stopped their pacing. They were red-faced, in the middle of a loud complaint. "And I'm telling you," Harrison was booming, "this whole Vance character, whoever he is running this place into the ground. We need to—" They both stopped, staring at the woman who had just entered. "Mr. Harrison." "Mr. Cole, a pleasure to finally meet you in person," Eliza said, her voice clear and cool, echoing in the suddenly silent room. "I'm Dr. Eliza Vance." She walked past their stunned, open-mouthed faces and took the seat at the head of the table. "I understand," she said, clasping her hands and leaning forward. "You have some concerns about my app. Please illuminate me." And that is how a single moment of courage and a lifetime of hidden knowledge can change your entire world. Eliza thought she was just a waitress, but she was a scholar, a leader, and a bridge between 2 worlds. Her story is a reminder that the people you ignore are often the most powerful people in the room. What hidden skills are you holding on to? If you were moved by Eliza's story, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder of their own worth. And of course, hit subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss another story of karma, justice, and the incredible twists of real life. Thank you for listening.